The crystal chandeliers of Aria dripped light onto tables cloaked in white linen, a silent, glittering testament to a world of immense power and hollow connections. At the very heart of this opulent theatre sat Mr. Sterling, a man whose soul seemed tailored from the same expensive, cold fabric as his suit. He swirled a vintage Bordeaux, the deep red liquid mirroring the jaded color of his thoughts. He wasn't just wealthy, he had weaponized wealth, using it as a shield and a sword. He scanned the room, his gaze an audit, dismissing the strained laughter and performative elegance of the other patrons. A younger man at a nearby table laughed too loudly, and Sterling felt a flash of irritation. Pathetic, he thought. They're all just playing a part. His sommelier approached, and Sterling cut him off before he could speak. It was then he saw her, a new waitress, moving with a quiet grace that was an anomaly in the room's forced grandeur. There was a weariness in her posture that his predatory instincts honed in on. As she approached to refill his water, he decided she would be his evening's entertainment. Leaning back with a smirk, he let the condescending Spanish words roll off his tongue, smooth and cruel. Tráeme la cuenta, y asegúrate de que esta vez no tardes una eternidad, ¿entiendes, niña? He said it with relish, anticipating the flicker of confusion, the blush of shame from a worker who likely only knew how to say gracias. He watched her, waiting for the stumble, but her hand, holding the heavy glass pitcher, remained steady. She placed it down with a soft click, her spine straightening almost imperceptibly. He felt a prickle of annoyance. She wasn't reacting as planned. He narrowed his eyes, leaning forward to deliver the final blow, his voice a low, venomous whisper meant only for her. ¿O es que eres demasiado estúpida para entender? Estás despedida. You're fired. The words hung in the air, a drop of poison in the pristine atmosphere. Before I reveal the words she spoke that shattered his entire world, I want you to answer this in the comments. What is the one thing money can absolutely never buy? The waitress, Isabella, didn't flinch. There were no tears, no desperate pleading. Instead, an expression of profound, weary sadness settled in her eyes as a faint, knowing smile touched her lips. She looked at him, truly looked at him, not as a customer, but as something else entirely, something broken. And then she responded, not in his cold textbook Spanish, but in a dialect that was like warm honey, a lyrical cadence from a sun-drenched village he had spent 3 decades trying to forget. El dinero te ha vuelto sordo y ciego, Ricardo, she said, her voice a soft bell in the opulent dining room. The name, Ricardo, struck him with the force of a physical blow. His smirk vanished, replaced by a mask of rigid shock. A cold dread, foreign and terrifying, began to seep into the cracks of his fortified ego. No one had called him Ricardo since he was a boy who ran through fields of wildflowers, long before he became the titan known as Sterling. She continued, her voice weaving a memory he had buried under layers of stock portfolios and corporate takeovers. Mi madre siempre decía que tu corazón no era malo, que solo estaba perdido. Dijo que eras el niño con el corazón de oro y la armadura de espinas. The boy with the heart of gold and the armor of thorns. A forgotten phrase from a forgotten life. From the pocket of her simple black apron, she retrieved a small worn object. It wasn't jewelry. It held no monetary value. It was a small wooden bird, crudely carved, its single wing slightly chipped. The air rushed from Sterling's lungs. The sounds of the restaurant, the clinking of silver, the murmur of conversation, faded into a dull roar. In their place, he heard the gentle hum of a lullaby sung in Spanish. He smelled jasmine from a garden he hadn't seen in 30 years. He felt the phantom touch of a calloused, loving hand brushing the hair from his forehead. It was the bird his father had carved for him the summer before he died. He'd lost it, and his nanny, Elena, had spent a whole day searching for it, finally presenting it to him with a smile that calmed his childish grief. Elena, Isabella's mother. The realization didn't just dawn on him. It crashed over him, a tidal wave of shame so potent it threatened to drown him. He looked at Isabella, truly saw her, and the face of his stern, loving nanny stared back at him from across the years. The woman who had promised his dying father she would always look after his boy. A promise he had repaid, by trying to humiliate her daughter. The sheer weight of his regret was a physical force, pressing down on his chest, making it impossible to breathe. The empire he had built felt like a pile of ash. He had fired her, the daughter of the woman whose hands had mended his scraped knees and cooked the meals that made him feel safe. "¿Dónde está ella?" he finally managed to ask, his voice a ragged whisper, the Spanish leaving his lips not as a weapon but as a desperate, broken plea. Isabella's composure finally cracked. A single tear escaped, tracing a path through a thin layer of exhaustion on her cheek. "Está en el Hospital St. Jude. La quimioterapia es muy cara. He estado trabajando en 2 lugares para..." Her voice trailed off, thick with a world of hardship he could not possibly comprehend. He who had just spent a fortune on wine had been casually cruel to a woman fighting to save the life of the person who had been his entire world. Slowly, as if moving through deep water, he rose from his chair. His towering presence, which had always commanded fear and respect, now felt hollow and small. He walked around the table and stood before Isabella. He was no longer Mr. Sterling, the billionaire. He was Ricardo, the lost boy. He reached out and gently took the small wooden bird from her hand, his own trembling. The rough wood felt more real than any gold he had ever touched. He didn't offer to rehire her. He didn't speak of money. He looked into her eyes, which were her mother's eyes, and spoke the only words in the universe that mattered. "Lo siento." Then he added, his voice urgent, raw, "Llévame con ella, ahora." Take me to her. Now. Isabella nodded, another tear falling. Without a second glance at his table, at the unfinished wine, at the life of cold, empty luxury, Ricardo Sterling followed Isabella out of the restaurant. He walked away from the golden cage he had built for himself, clutching a small wooden bird in his hand, a priceless key to a soul he had almost forgotten he had.